In 6 months, I'll be donning my graduation cap, stepping into a future that already promises a new job. This milestone marks a turning point where, frankly, we no longer need her presence in our lives. However, until we claim what's rightfully ours, she remains a reluctant part of our household, a piece of the past I'm eager to leave behind. In this particular moment, I discovered Mac was also awake despite our separate living quarters. I never planned to listen in on their conversation, but the shocking nature of their words rooted me to the spot, unable to move or interrupt. For the next 5 months, I carried on as if their words had never reached my ears, keeping my reactions and interactions unchanged. And then, the day of Kylan's college graduation arrived. He burst out of the house in the early hours, a bundle of nerves and excitement, without so much as a nod of acknowledgement for the years of care and support I'd provided. "I won't need dinner tonight," was all he managed before leaving, a casual comment that might have gone unnoticed if I hadn't been privy to that previous conversation. I couldn't shake the feeling that even a simple thank you or an invitation to celebrate this moment together would have meant the world to me. It seemed evident he planned to celebrate with his biological mother and Mac, leaving me to contemplate the day in solitude. As the door closed behind them, I found myself alone, surrounded by the silence of an empty room, my only company a piece of paper and a pen. My name is Celia, a 51-year-old woman who has been part of this family, alongside my husband Mac and his son Kylan, for 17 years. Mac and I both brought our pasts and hopes into this second marriage. My journey before Mac was marred by the heartache of not fitting in with my ex-husband's family, a pain so deep it felt as though I had been discarded. Mac, a companion from my high school days, reached out during this tumultuous period. Although we were little more than acquaintances back then, a chance meeting at a small reunion for close friends changed everything. Learning of my divorce, he offered a hand of friendship and support, sharing his own challenges as a single father raising his 3-year-old son, Kylan. "Our lives aren't over yet. Let's give it our all," he encouraged, words that brought comfort and hope to a bruised heart. It didn't take long for us to recognize the shared pain in each other's stories, drawing us closer. Despite the fear of stepping into a new marriage, I was moved by Mac's kindness and resilience. Choosing to embark on a new journey together, we found love and understanding in a partnership that promised a new beginning. After my first marriage ended, I found love again and made the decision to remarry. Along with this new chapter in my life, I chose to leave my job and dedicate myself to being a full-time homemaker. Despite warnings from friends and family about quitting my job and entering into a new marriage, especially to a man with a young child, I felt confident in my choice. Kylan, my stepson, was only 3 years old at the time, and I believed that spending quality time together and forming a close-knit family unit was of utmost importance. I've always had a deep affection for children, and I was eager to take on the role of raising him, convinced that there wouldn't be any issues in blending our new family. However, I quickly discovered that my optimism was somewhat naive. Kylan showed signs of severe stranger anxiety towards me, refusing to eat or sleep, and bursting into tears at the mere sight of me. I hoped that with time and effort, his anxiety would diminish, and he would begin to see me as his mother. I poured all my energy into caring for him, enduring sleepless nights and striving to engage him during the day, but my attempts to bond seemed futile. Mac, my husband, noticed my struggles and attempted to offer comfort by mentioning how beautiful Kylan's biological mother was, implying that Kylan's rejection might stem from his inability to adjust to my presence. Although Mac meant no harm with his comment, it cut deep, leaving me feeling diminished as a woman, a wife, and a stepmother. To make matters worse, Mac frequently compared me to his ex-wife, either in jest or criticism, which only added to my feelings of inadequacy and isolation. Comments about his ex-wife's cooking or parenting skills, intended to be light-hearted, felt like veiled critiques of my efforts. Before we married, Mac and I faced life's challenges as a team, but once married, I often felt more like a helper than a partner. Despite my best efforts, Kylan remained distant. He stopped crying in my presence, which was a small victory, but he never showed me affection or acknowledged me as a motherly figure. He interacted warmly with Mac, his biological family, and even strangers, leaving me feeling even more isolated within my own home. Thoughts of leaving crossed my mind numerous times during that first challenging year, driven by the lack of connection with Kylan and the strain in my relationship with Mac. Yet, the fear of hearing "I told you so" from those who had cautioned me against this marriage kept me from taking that step. I reminded myself that great achievements take time, hoping that perseverance in my role as a homemaker and stepmother would eventually lead to a breakthrough. Despite my efforts and the passage of time, the warm bond I longed for with Kylan never materialized. He may have grown accustomed to my presence, but the genuine connection and affectionate relationship I had hoped for remained out of reach. Despite his apparent dislike for me, my fondness for Kylan only grew with time. Watching him grow filled me with happiness, even though our relationship faced its challenges. When Kylan began preschool, he hesitantly started to call me Mom. However, my presence at school events seemed to unsettle him deeply, his looks of panic pushing me away. His teachers mentioned he might just be overly attached, yet no effective solutions were presented to ease this tension. While Kylan's growth was a source of joy for me, his continued rejection weighed heavily on my heart. Mac would often dismiss my concerns with a vague "it'll get better," but he never truly addressed the issue. One day, driven by a desire to improve our relationship, I asked Kylan directly what I could do to make him love me. His surprised reaction made me anxious, but I waited for his response, hoping for a breakthrough. Kylan's reply was heartbreaking. He accused me of not loving him, claiming his dad had told him so. According to Kylan, I was the reason his biological mother was no longer around. Shocked and hurt by his words, I felt blindsided. The turmoil between Kylan's mom and Mac had nothing to do with me, yet it seemed Mac had been pinning the blame on me, influencing Kylan's perception of me as a fake mom. That night, I confronted Mac about Kylan calling me a fake mom, questioning how he could have come to such a conclusion without Mac's influence. Mac's bold denial and justification of his actions left me speechless and frustrated. He refused to take responsibility, suggesting I was to blame for Kylan's detachment. This accusation left me at a loss, unable to comprehend why Mac would undermine our relationship in such a manner. Despite my best efforts, my bond with Kylan never strengthened, and my connection with Mac began to feel more distant. Yet, as anyone knows, children grow up regardless of the circumstances around them. It was around the time we were gearing up for Kylan's start at elementary school that a particular incident highlighted the growing gap between us. Mac suggested a premium backpack for Kylan, one with a price tag that made me blink in surprise. "This one's great, right?" he said, pointing it out. The backpack was indeed stylish, but its cost seemed excessive to me. Mac's suggestion that my parents should buy it as a school entry gift left me puzzled. "Your family could easily afford a gift like this for their grandson's school entry," he mentioned casually, as though the idea was the most natural in the world. My confusion must have been evident, as I tilted my head, trying to process his suggestion. My family did have a comfortable financial background, owning real estate and with my grandfather having been recognized among the wealthy. Given that Mac knew about my family's status from our high school days, it wasn't shocking he'd suggest this. However, the notion of my grandparents buying Kylan a school backpack felt misplaced, especially since Kylan and I hadn't developed a close relationship, and he hadn't formed any bond with my family due to Mac's insistence that our lack of blood relation meant Kylan and I didn't need to participate in family gatherings. Mac's expectation for my parents to buy an expensive backpack for Kylan, despite their lack of a meaningful connection, struck me as audacious. I responded with a hesitant smile, trying to decline the suggestion gently. However, Mac seemed annoyed, pressing on about why I wouldn't just ask them, adding a tone of challenge that suggested he was testing my family's willingness to support us. I was taken aback by his attitude, but chose not to confront him directly. I had already planned to buy the backpack with my own savings and present it as if it were a gift from my parents. To my surprise, when I mentioned the situation to my parents, they graciously offered to purchase the backpack. In our community, it was common for maternal grandparents to provide such gifts for school entry, although I worried it might seem presumptuous given the complicated family dynamics. My parents' willingness to contribute, despite the awkwardness of the situation, was a comforting gesture. Their support reminded me that, regardless of the challenges with Kylan and Mac, I still had a family willing to stand by me and extend their love in unexpected ways. This act of kindness, however, sparked a reflection on my role as Kylan's stepmother and the complex layers of family relationships that we were navigating. In moments when my world seemed to crumble, my mother was my unwavering support, always there to catch me before I fell. Her presence was a gentle reminder of the strength of our bond. In a simple gesture of gratitude, I sought something modest yet meaningful for Kylan, my child, something that wouldn't weigh heavy on my wallet but would bring joy to his heart. My mother understood, and with a heart full of emotion, I expressed my thanks to her. Not long after, a sleek black backpack arrived, chosen with Kylan in mind. Its simplicity belied its importance. Kylan's eyes lit up with excitement as he wore it for the first time, a smile of satisfaction spreading across his face. However, Mac, Kylan's other parent, was less impressed, criticizing the backpack for its lack of extravagance. Despite the backpack's practicality, lightweight and durable, ideal for Kylan's small frame, Mac dismissed it, desiring something more luxurious. This wasn't the first time Mac's expectations had clashed with mine. When it was time for Kylan to start middle school, Mac pushed for high-end brands for everything from sports bags to shoes, expecting my parents to foot the bill. Influenced by Mac's materialistic values, Kylan began to adopt a mocking tone with me, suggesting my worth was tied to my family's wealth. It was clear Mac had been feeding these ideas to him. I tried to ignore it, focusing instead on my role as Kylan's mother, despite feeling alienated. Mac's materialism stemmed from a desire to exploit my family's wealth, marrying me for financial security and to ensure someone would take care of Kylan. But despite the lack of warmth in our relationship, I remained committed to Kylan's upbringing, refusing to abandon him even if it meant being perceived as the lesser parent. As Kylan grew older and prepared for college, Mac saw another opportunity to press my parents for money, suggesting they cover the college fees. The request was audacious, far beyond the occasional expense for school supplies. Yet, I knew refusing would only invite Mac's scorn. To avoid conflict, I used the money from a previous divorce settlement to cover Kylan's tuition, pretending it was a contribution from my parents. This allowed Kylan to complete his college education and secure a job offer upon graduation. Though our relationship had its challenges, I found solace in knowing I had played a role in his journey to adulthood. As he neared graduation, I felt a mix of relief and sadness, recognizing my limited role in his life was drawing to a close. Despite the absence of a strong bond between us, I had fulfilled my duty as a parent, hoping against hope that it would spare him from future hardships. In the stillness of the night, I found myself waking up and decided to make a quick trip to the bathroom. On my way, the glow from the kitchen caught my eye, hinting at someone's presence. Assuming Kylan had returned from an evening out, I ventured into the kitchen, only to discover Mac was there as well. Hidden in the shadows, I overheard a conversation that would forever change the way I saw my family. Kylan, poised to graduate in a mere 6 months and boasting a job offer, suggested to Mac that they didn't need me anymore, referring to me as useless. Yet, he proposed keeping me around until they could claim their inheritance, eager to get rid of the trash as soon as possible. Mac had been staying in a separate bedroom, and I had not realized until that moment, was also awake. Their words, unintentionally overheard by me, were like a dagger to my heart. Kylan's next words momentarily lifted my spirits. He spoke of celebrating as a family after his graduation, offering to pay for the meal with money from his part-time job. However, my heart sank again when he mentioned inviting his birth mother to the graduation. It had been years since she had been involved in any school event, and now, for one last time, she was invited to celebrate this milestone. This casual conversation about reuniting with his birth mother, who had not been a part of his upbringing or education, made me feel utterly sidelined. Despite my years of dedication raising Kylan since he was 3, I'd always been excluded from school events and milestones. I had hoped to attend his college graduation, only to be told that parents typically don't attend such ceremonies. Yet Kylan had been inviting his birth mother all along. Overhearing Kylan and Mac's conversation revealed a painful truth. They did not see me as family. Mac even expressed gratitude for having a convenient housekeeper around, critiquing the meals I prepared and revealing that Kylan had been selling the lunches I made since middle school. This revelation crushed me, mocking the care and effort I had put into looking after him. Feeling betrayed and heartbroken, I retreated, unable to bear their laughter any longer. For 19 years I had devoted myself to raising Kylan, yet I was never acknowledged as part of the family. That night, as I cried myself to sleep, I made a decision that had been brewing in my heart for a long time. In the following 6 months, I maintained my role without revealing what I had heard. Then, on the day of Kylan's university graduation, he left early in the morning, brimming with excitement but offering no words of gratitude or an invitation to me. In that moment, I realized the depth of my resolve, ready to embrace a new chapter in my life, one where I would finally acknowledge my worth and seek the happiness I deserved. That evening I found myself in a moment of solitude, having decided to skip dinner. The silence of the room was a stark contrast to the turmoil in my heart, spurred by a conversation I had accidentally overheard. In that conversation, it was clear that Kylan planned to spend the evening with his biological mother and Mac, who also mentioned he wouldn't need dinner. This made me reflect on the lack of recognition and appreciation for my presence in their lives. With nothing but my thoughts, a piece of paper, and a pen for company, I jotted down my feelings. It was barely past 2 p.m., much too early for them to be back. My solitude was interrupted by a phone call from Mac, but I let it go unanswered for a while, sipping my coffee with a smirk, imagining his growing panic. Eventually, out of a mix of pity and curiosity, I answered the call, only to be met with Mac's frantic inquiries about a note I had left. Mac's confusion and concern were palpable, but I remained resolute, hinting at the irreversible step I had taken towards ending our marriage. I had left him divorce papers alongside a note explaining my decision. His immediate reaction was to refuse the divorce, but his concern quickly shifted to the unpaid tuition fees for Kylan's education. This shift in priorities didn't surprise me. It was a stark reminder of where his concerns truly lay. As we spoke, it became evident that Mac was more troubled by the financial implications of our separation than the emotional fallout. He stumbled over his words, trying to negotiate and reason, but I stood firm, cutting through his attempts to sway me. It was clear that he had been blindsided by my actions, unaware of my plans and the depth of my resolve. In the midst of our conversation, Kylan also reached out, his tone brash and entitled, demanding to know why his tuition hadn't been paid. His approach only reinforced my decision to distance myself from their lives. I advised him to seek answers from his father, firmly closing the door on any further involvement with them. This moment marked a turning point for me. After years of being marginalized and treated as little more than a convenient fixture in their lives, I chose to reclaim my dignity and independence. The realization that my role in their lives had been so thoroughly diminished and unappreciated was painful, but it also freed me to pursue a path where I could find self-respect and hopefully, in time, happiness. After unintentionally catching a snippet of their conversation, I was compelled to make a drastic decision: to leave Mac and Kylan and erase my presence from their lives. My phone became a constant reminder of their existence, incessantly ringing, which only fueled my resolve. If they had the time to persistently call, they could just as well manage their financial responsibilities. In a bid for a fresh start, I changed my phone and number the following day. 4 months into my new life, A routine errand at the municipal office revealed a shocking negligence. The divorce papers I had anticipated would be finalized by now hadn't even been submitted. This discovery brought me back to a place I thought I had left behind for good. Despite my reluctance, I found myself standing at the doorstep of what used to be my home, the key turning in the lock as if no time had passed. However, what greeted me inside was a stark testament to time's relentless march, a house abandoned to decay, overwhelmed by the stench of neglect. The living room had transformed into a landscape of forgotten meals and unattended chores, a visual echo of the lives of two individuals who had never valued the sanctity of a clean home. It was amidst this chaos that Mac emerged, his appearance as disheveled as the home he stood in. His confession of being fired for embezzling funds, a desperate attempt to cover Kylan's tuition, left me speechless. His attempt to downplay his actions only added to my disbelief. Despite his entreaties for me to return, citing a bizarre justification that my departure was linked to the unpaid tuition, his words fell on deaf ears. Mac's plea, adorned with declarations of love previously unvoiced during our marriage, struck me as a hollow attempt to mend bridges long burned. His inability to understand the gravity of his actions, coupled with a misguided belief in a simplistic resolution to our complex issues, was a clear indicator of the chasm between us. My decision to leave, underscored by the physical and emotional distance I had placed between us, was not a spur-of-the-moment choice, but a necessary step towards self-preservation and seeking a life where respect and dignity were not negotiable. Throughout my life, I often leaned on others for support, but a friend once challenged me to handle my own affairs. We laughed about it, but the humor faded when we noticed a cockroach crawling from a noodle cup in my cluttered room, signaling neglect. This was a metaphor for my life at that time, seemingly destined to be overrun with problems if I didn't change. Years later, after ending my marriage and finding a sense of contentment elsewhere, I was struck by the sad news of my mother's passing. At her funeral, I encountered two people from my past: Mac, my ex, and Kylan, his new partner. Despite the complex web of shared friends, their presence was a surprise, especially considering Kylan's history of ingratitude towards my mother, who had done so much for him. Their motives quickly became clear. They saw my mother's death as an opportunity for inheritance, with Kylan brazenly expecting a share despite our strained relationship. Their audacity and Mac's supportive smirk angered me. I firmly told them that if their intentions were so self-serving, I wished they hadn't come at all. My outburst drew attention, but it was a moment of clarity for me, choosing to stand up for what was right amidst the grief and confusion of loss. In the midst of confusion and whispers, as I approached a gathering with Mac and Kylan by my side, their faces drained of color upon seeing two familiar figures, my ex-husband and our child. I introduced Mac and Kylan to Mackay and Harley, my current family. Mac, flustered, questioned Mackay's presence with a hint of nervousness, recognizing him as the president of the company where he worked. Without waiting for Mac's response, I proudly introduced Mackay as my husband and Harley as our daughter. This revelation caught Mac and Kylan off guard, especially when they realized the connection between their work and my personal life. Mackay, with a firm tone, made it clear he would not tolerate any harm coming to me, blending professional boundaries with personal concern. As the conversation veered towards inheritance, Harley, with maturity beyond her years, addressed Kylan directly, debunking his misplaced expectations about inheritance rights. She made it clear that as the biological daughter, Kylan's claims were unfounded, leaving him visibly embarrassed and diminished. Harley's assertiveness stemmed from her unique position as my biological daughter with Mackay, my first love, and her knowledge of the family dynamics that had long kept us apart. Mackay's family, despite their business success, had forced me to distance myself from Harley, advocating that I forget I had a child, a stance Mackay never supported despite the pressure. This confrontation shed light on the complex relationships and histories intertwining our lives, highlighting the strength and resilience I had found in my journey from being coerced into silence to reuniting with my true family. My journey through love and family complexities began when I caved under the pressure and agreed to a divorce, distancing myself from my first love, Mackay, and our daughter, Harley. Despite his parents' negative opinions about me, Mackay raised Harley with love and care, turning her into a compassionate young woman. Throughout my subsequent marriage to Mac, Harley sent me letters annually, a connection that kept my hope alive, even though we never met in person during those years. She also visited my parents, maintaining a bond with her grandparents that I could only cherish from afar. During my marriage to Mac, I tried to nurture Kylan with love, despite the lack of reciprocation, which made our relationship strained and fueled by obligation more than affection. After the divorce, Mackay reached out to me, having been informed of my situation by my mother. It was then I discovered Mackay had remained single, holding a place for me in his heart even after all these years. With the absence of his disapproving parents and a stable career, Mackay proposed that we reunite, an idea that filled me with a blend of surprise and joy. I shared the news of our potential reunion with Mac and Kylan, revealing Harley's true identity to them. Mac was visibly shocked, likely never having imagined that the woman he had once married was deeply connected to someone of Mackay's stature. Harley, with her sharp insight, confronted Kylan, questioning his motives for their past relationship and accusing him of being with me for financial gain. Kylan's reaction, a mix of denial and sorrow, underscored the complexities of our intertwined lives. Harley's confrontation with Kylan revealed deep-seated issues stemming from Mac's influence, highlighting a missed opportunity for a more harmonious relationship among my children. Kylan's upbringing, marred by Mac's values, left him ill-equipped to form genuine connections, contrasting starkly with Harley's upbringing under Mackay's loving guidance. This stark difference underscored the tragic reality that the potential for happiness and unity within our blended family had been significantly hindered by past decisions and influences. I found myself nodding in agreement, acknowledging my mistakes in parenting. "I'm really sorry, Harley. You deserve someone far better. Kylan, it's best if you stay away from Harley and her wealth." Following this rejection, witnessed by everyone, Kylan could only offer a stern look in response. Despite his demeanor, I knew he too was entangled in Mac's manipulations. Yet, as an adult, Kylan's path to happiness would remain obstructed until he came to terms with his own missteps and those of his father. "It's time for you to go as well. This home is for family only," Mackay declared, effectively showing them the door. His words mirrored the painful exclusion I once felt from Mac and Kylan. Despite his circumstances and the awkward fit at Mackay's company, especially after being let go from his previous position due to his age and the circumstances surrounding his departure, Mac continued to work there. It seemed unlikely he'd secure employment elsewhere. Why keep him on board knowing his past with Mac? I questioned Mackay. He chuckled in response. I was well aware. Having him here ensures he won't trouble Celia anymore. His explanation brought unexpected comfort, revealing his actions were in my defense. Additionally, I was struck by astonishing news. Kylan had severed ties with Mac, likely a reflection on his previous conduct and his attitude towards me. Following Harley's rejection, Kylan was forced to reevaluate his life. His dreams of securing a hefty inheritance had evaporated, leading him to understand that true happiness demands personal endeavor. While part of me felt Mac got what he deserved, I harbored no ill wishes towards Kylan. Instead, I wished for his growth and eventual happiness, a reflection of my role in his life. Life has since taken a new turn, with me now living alongside Mackay and Harley. Our departure caused May and Lars to realize their mistake as they witnessed Mackay and Harley's despondency. Yet, their regret came too late to alter the course of events, especially after my remarriage. "Did you ever find happiness?" Mackay inquired one day. Reflecting, I acknowledged the moments of joy and shared smiles, but I believed the happiest chapters of my life were still unfolding. With Harley's wedding on the horizon, my wish is to witness our past challenges transform into memories we can one day laugh about, aiming for continuous growth and understanding.